Janet Yellen and Roku assist Tesla in an 80-point gain at its apex in basically 24 hours is our story for today. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. I want to thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you'd like some ideas on investing and trading that you won't find anywhere else, please join us on Patreon. So today is kind of an interesting day, the 24th of June, 2021. The reason it's interesting is that usually when you have big moves in a stock price, you're looking for the usual culprits. One, it could be something big as a statement made by the CEO. It could be a new product or service. Those things are sort of out of line right now because we're in the quiet period for Tesla, even though Elon did tweet that he was proud of the productive activity of his coworkers. So the next thing we're wondering about, well, did we get big analyst news or information we didn't know about that was actually successfully pushing the stock price? And the answer to that is we didn't. The analysts who have Tesla targeting 800, 900, 1,000 are pretty much in line with what they've been talking about all along, so we haven't gotten a groundswell of new participants at that level. So the next question then is, well, what's the answer to this circumstance? And in particular, can this continue into next week? Which is what we'd like to answer for you today. But before we get into this, I just wanted to note to you that we're seeing a lot of feedback from large channels watching our channel and then putting our material on their channel, and it's coming back in a feedback loop from people who watch this show. And I just wanted to inform those of you who are doing this that it's a copyright violation, and we'd be happy to work with you to allow you to use our material, but you can't do so without permission. Otherwise, you have to pay. So to get into this, there are two components of how we analyze what's going on currently. The first is Janet Yellen, the Fed, and the Treasury working together. As you recall, last week, there was a great anticipation. There was a 6.6% inflation announcement made, promptly sank. And the reason it sank was that the fear was that the Fed, seeing those larger number, would have to in some way make big changes that would negatively affect the markets. The Fed/Treasury's response was that they wouldn't see interest rate moves until 2023. And that articulated to the market that the fear about inflation that everyone had, they thought were somewhat overblown. So once this sort of issue cleared the air, that's when we saw sort of the first jump in a lot of stocks, including Tesla, heading back towards 620. So in order to so as you saw today was a follow through of what we kind of saw yesterday and the day before, where Tesla stock price was up and up nicely. And so the big question mark is, once we have the Fed under control, what's the next thing to happen? Well, as you may recall, one of the things about how the stock market works is there's almost, there are many tiers of stock, but for argument now, there are really kind of two tiers of stocks. There are growth stocks, and then there are slow or no growth stocks. So in general, for example, housing, drugs, even grocery stores, the population is increasing at 2% per year. So if you want to know when that thing is going to double in value, it's going to be 2% per year times X number of years. And that tells you it's sort of the growth rate times how many years before it doubles in size, basically. So in this case, what's going on is that while I was trying to understand how and why this was happening, there was kind of an issue that popped up, which is there's a company called Roku. As you know, Roku did really great during the pandemic. It went from like $30 to $300, $350. So something very interesting happened over, let's say, the last 4 or 5 trading days, which is Roku went from about $340 a share to now $426 a share, somewhat mirroring the updraft in Tesla stock that we've seen in the last few days. And so this is a clue. So there are other stocks you can look at on the growth list. For example, Apple has gone from, let's say, the early 120s up to now 133. And we can go through a list of the usual suspects of NASDAQ large cap growth companies. Well, these companies / Roku, for example, present an interesting problem for investors, which is, a 30% move up of the stock price in a day and a half or 2 days is the new normal for trading / investing. A big part of it is modeling using, call it Lotus spreadsheets on computers to sort of see where things are going, but this is basically what's happening. So what's been going on, let's call it for the last month, and especially last week before the Fed announced what they were going to do, is that all the growth stocks have been getting body slammed. As you know, Tesla was down into the 550 range, for example. Now it's almost 700. So when you have that dramatic a move that's occurring, you really have to pay attention, certainly to the fundamentals of the company that you're investing in this case, Tesla, but you also have to pay attention to, well, how is the market pricing growth stocks? And as you do that, it sort of reveals a great deal. So when we make comments about where we think Tesla's going and why, we will often say Tesla's doing X, Tesla's doing well, they're growing well. But the other question that the whole marketplace is asking is, now, we know that they're growing, and that's great, but how is the market valuing growth stocks currently? And at Tesla's growth rate, should it get the valuation it's at? Should it be higher or should it be lower? Well, over the last few weeks, the answer is it should have been lower. But I believe that Tesla is exceeding the growth rate that was expected of them in terms of its current valuation. So what we're saying is that, yes, Tesla's stock price is up. However, the price that we're seeing for the stock currently reflects the growth rate that was expected, not being experienced by the company currently. And with that growth rate being defined by the numbers we get next week, we could see easily another 50 to 100 points, maybe even 150 points up for Tesla. All of this is possibility. Obviously, at any time, the downdraft of this is a possibility as well. But the drivers for that might be, as we discussed before, Bitcoin. Another downward driver might be, hey, what if they did miss the earnings target number, which we think is on that low likelihood zone, hence our sense that things are going a lot further up than this. And then the third item is, what if the market decided to crash, in which case Tesla doesn't get its full valuation, which has been the problem for like the last month, based on how fast it's growing, even in a difficult market. So we're really excited about the opportunity to bring this forward, because as we're reading the Wall Street Journal, Barron's, and all these places, there's this discussion of, oh, Tesla has lost its ability to deliver growth or numbers. And isn't that amazing? And it's consistent with competition and other things. Well, guess what? There's another variable out there, which is the company will do and has done fine in a difficult market, but it actually has shown some amazing ability to grow at times when other people have had a lot of challenges. And I think the biggest thing going on right now for Tesla is that despite better than expected growth, they've been anticipatorily able to deliver chips to their space that have been a challenge volume-wise to competitors, particularly huge competitors that are major OEMs around the world. So I was kind of excited to sort of get a good understanding of what was happening here, because it seemed that it was really hard to hang something valid on why Tesla stock price was up. And anytime you have a dramatic up move like that without certain underpinnings, it increases the likelihood of returning to the lower numbers that they were at. Now, I feel like one last clue that we just got in terms of where things are for Tesla is that Elon came out with a very positive sense of numbers produced by his team this quarter. Now, as you know, we kind of have what I call the Elon barometer. So if Elon is getting on the plane and he and his mom are helping to finish off cars in the factory and deliver them, they're trying to make the quarter numbers by the extra effort they're putting in. If Elon is nowhere near the factory and he's sending emails, good job, that's another metric, which is kind of what's going on now. Another way things could work is that Elon would send a letter, say, hey, if we make our numbers and you guys work hard, the quarter will be great. So our read of the Elonometer right now is that he's doing the you did a great job, not let me help you to push out some cars, let me help you deliver some cars, let us figure out how we're going to get those numbers by getting the incremental last deliveries that are available out there. So I'd have to say that I'm really, really positive about what we're going to see from Tesla definitely over the next week. But after that production number, Thursday or Friday of next week, I then think that we're going to see a nice run for the stock, because there are a lot of people who will have, I think, positive answers to what they'd like to see from Tesla. And I think that after the analysts have a chance to digest those new numbers and anticipatorily look at where Tesla is going to get to this year in terms of production and delivery, they're really going to have to sort of elevate expectations, because we're going to already have a higher stock price, but we're also going to have a good reason for it to be higher in the number of vehicles being produced. There's one last sort of teaser item that we'd like to add to this, and that is the China discussion, because we just got some really interesting news. We'll probably do a whole show on this, but there's a professor who did a story in the New York Times about warning Apple in their handling of China. And basically, Apple decided to put its entire supply chain in China, resulting in competition from a lot of other Chinese manufacturers using mostly Apple parts. Apple did get the request from the Chinese government to hand over the software component while the hardware is being built in China, and they declined on that. But it was risky, given that they have all their manufacturing in country, and China could say, well, if you don't give us the software, we aren't giving you the hardware in the form of all the suppliers you have in China. So this kind of answers a question for us, and this is a show that we have coming, which is, now wait a second, Elon had a choice. When he built the first factory for Model 3 in China, it was 9 months from start of construction to the first car coming off the line. Now, in this sort of second round, yes, they've been doing more building, and the number of cars being produced in China is high, but the option was there for him to simply build a second Chinese factory that would deliver just as many cars as the first factory, and therefore push more cars than expected out. And Elon decided not to build that factory. He decided to build both, obviously in Austin, where he's finishing, and in Germany. And in both cases, instead of taking 9 months to build, it took 2 years, or it will overall take 2 years for both factories to be completed. So this is an interesting problem and something we wanted to add as a teaser to sort of get you guys thinking as we bring in a show about this issue. So at any rate, we're looking forward to more strong performance by Tesla as it gets its full valuation in this environment, especially after we get our numbers in from next week. And I think that if you look around, you'll find that this is a valid argument for where we are, and it also validates the stock price being here or higher as we go into the next few days heading to production and sales numbers. Any rate, again, reminder, we do have a few SpaceX shares of interest. Please drop us a note on a private message on Facebook, or you can join us on Patreon. The information is below. We also wanted to encourage you to consider our health tips for the week. First, I'd encourage you, if you're going to do lovemaking, to minimize the amount you eat, because blood flow to the stomach to digest a heavy meal will limit the blood flow to other extremities that are helpful in that process. We have a list of health tips that are below, but I wanted to include one final health tip that I think you might find useful, and that is regarding air fryers. Now, I have friends that have gotten this air fryer thing and are really thrilled about it because there's no oil involved. Now, I think that's good that there's no oil in theory, because you're not ingesting more oil in that process. The one problem with this whole concept was shared with us by a consulting physician who's a kidney doc. And what he explained to me was there's this huge problem that's going on. Your body is sort of a over 2,000 or 3,000 year evolved entity. And the stuff you've been eating all that time, your body learned how to manage it well. The problem is food technology in the last 50 to 75 years has accelerated rapidly to deliver really cool things that taste great, etc. One of the things that's been delivered is fried foods. So the way to think about it is, if you had fried chicken, for example, in your verbiage in mind, you're thinking about chicken that's fried. Your body is thinking about, there is a substance that used to be chicken that is now a fried entity that we don't know all that well. So why don't we just take that unknown entity and store it next to your organs? So that's why fried foods end up being a source of type 2 diabetes, is this storage of foreign entities. So I highly recommend that as you interact with your physician, you discuss this with them, because this is another interesting technology example of how things move forward over time, and might be something for you to consider as well as you're deciding what your diet should be and how to manage that diet relative to your best health. So, again, we look forward to your feedback. We look forward to a real strong Tesla stock over the next few days for really solid reasons. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lehit Hebrew, Hoda Hafez, Farsi, Strazvich, and Russian, Ni hao ma Chinese, Konbanwa Japanese, Namaste Hindi, Strazvich, Russian, Heido Swedish, and G'day, our friends in Australia. And in Jamaica, we say, Nuff respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to your constructive comments.